Hi everybody, it's a Vince Guaraldi Charlie Brown Christmas Day. Been a month or two since I posted here, but it's about time I gave you an update. That shouldn't be but it's time. It should be so it's time. So there are a couple books that I got for my birthday. My birthday was 2 months and how many days ago? Let's see, it's the 19th of December, so my birthday was 1 month and 16 days ago. I was given this book by my dear friend Illich, Nick Drake, The Life by Richard Morton Jack, in this smooth hardcover from Hatchet Books. Here's the full 360 on it. There he is with a guitar. You know, it's always mysterious whether or not he actually owned a guitar. He's always just playing like a prop, you know? And then, yeah, it's like this. Look at that. Look at those end papers. So this is like a cool book. I'm so excited to read this. Illich himself was reading this. Haven't begun this yet. I'm a little bit intimidated too, because I wonder how much of the book is going to be taken up with like tragic aspects of the story, or if it's going to be mostly all taken up with like childhood or like, the development of the artist we know as Nick Drake, and in that way, if it would be like my Ashbery biography or something, because I love stuff like that. But anyway, it's a very nice gift, and it's got lots of those like photo inserts, you know, 1, 2, 3, count them. So that's very exciting. And then look at this booktube, one of the biggest books you've ever seen, Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy. This is I've actually read some of it. Where am I in it? I'm on page 50 or so. And one thing that I've noticed so far is that it's possible to skim in such a way that you kind of read quotes if you want to read them. Like your eyes can kind of drift over a page and get the sense of the page without you having to labor over every quotation. However, if you're in the mood, you can slow down and sink into all the references, because it's just kind of set nicely, and it looks really good. And women are all day a-dressing to pleasure other men abroad, and go like sluts at home, not caring to please their own husbands whom they should. Now there's lots of stuff in this book. I know he has this nom de plume Democritus, and for a lot of the start of the book, he's like, why would I call myself that? Why would I presume to call myself that? I think that everybody who's writing a book should feel free to call themselves whoever they need to call themselves in order to write the book. You know, if you need to title yourself after a certain kind of ancient bard that never existed, but, you know, would behave with the kind of grandeur you need to get the poems written, then you should call yourself that by all means. Of course, we all understand that now. But, you know, Robert was just doing his due diligence and explaining that for people who needed to have that explained. So how's that for a birthday haul right there? There are also a couple of books that I just bought myself. This is, I was talking to a friend who loves Slouching Towards Bethlehem. I had a copy that fell apart right as I was reading that first, like, LA thing. Like, right as I was reading Some Dreamers of the Golden Dream, like, the spine kind of broke, and I was, like, being sheepish about going back to the book. And so now I just thought it was time to go ahead and get the actual, you know, like, definitive edition of not only that book, but this book, Play It As It Lays, which freaked me out when I first read it. My friend Graham went to a movie where they did like a movie inspired by Play It As It Lays, and apparently it was well made but very scary. And I just thought, you know what? The book is kind of like that too. Scary, I mean grim, you know? Kind of not the easiest read in the world. And I feel like it could be like a test of my maturity. Read the novel again and see if I can now view it as this like fertile intellectual territory. And then there's these other books that I've never thought really about buying on their own. Run River, A Book of Common Prayer, and The White Album. Although now I think about buying The White Album because The White Album is, that's coincidentally my favorite Beatles album, but it's that guy who I said likes Play It As, or saw the movie of Play It As It Lays, and that's his favorite essay collection of hers. And I know many people love Slouching Towards Bethlehem. There's kind of a like texture to the cover here. It's like got a little bit of that. It's not like the slick cover. It's more like Well, I don't know how this one started out because it's so covered in hand oils. I feel like it's just transformed by that. Y'all might get a kick out of this thing, which is in there. I typed out clepsydra one time and put in line numbers because, like, I typed it all out by hand because I just thought it was kind of crazy how it's such a beautiful poem, and I don't know what it means. Not that I don't know what it means, but that it just, it evaporates. Like it's so there musically, but it evaporates so completely, and I thought that was kind of cool. So I got that for myself recently. I bought The Great Divide because it was on sale, and I have a little stud circle area. You can see here, it's got The Good War and They All Sang working in The Great Divide. I think I have Division Street America is somewhere, but I don't know where it is. But that's kind of a busted old Avon paperback. But I love reading these. I mostly take out working, but The Great Divide is cool to have. And more thoughts on this book, to come. And then most recently, I got this book, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, because I was recommended it. And as you'll see, I like crime stuff. So these are all acquisitional stuff, acquisition updates. Let me kind of arrange everything in the order in which I read it. So, Whiteout. I read this, and it is magnificent. A McNally edition. There's like a typo online where like there's some website where they have a picture of this book where it says it has a preface by Anthony Madrid, but that's the Emily Dickinson book. It's beautiful. It's really sturdy. It has this preface that describes this tooth extraction procedure and the brute force required to do it really convincingly. This book really deserves its own video from me, but it really kicked me off on kind of a reading spree, and I read it some here in Madison and then a lot in Knoxville and finished it in Knoxville. Here's a book acquired at McKay's, Marcel Proust by Edmund White. This was a really good read. I like that it focuses on his amours, and I just like the way it was written, and I like these hardcovers. I like my book for Herman Melville. This was valuable because it gave me a much better sense of his relationship to his maid, who wrote that book that's published as a New York Review Books classic, called Monsieur Proust, like his relationship to her, and also like it gave me a good kind of concrete feel for the settings of his life, like his apartments and things like that, how he would keep his apartments, when he would go out, some facts about his asthma and so forth. This also probably deserves its own video from me. That got me reading some more Proust. But where I was in Knoxville, I didn't have my copy of The Garamont Way. But like I was here where I was for so long. Look at this note. Haven't read Proust for about a year or more, but I'm still here as of 6/24/22. Part 2, Chapter 1. Well, I didn't have that in Knoxville, but after reading this, I wanted to read some Garamont Way, so I purchased this nice copy. And this was really a pleasure to read Part 2, Chapter 1. And I read Part 2, Chapter 1, and that Part 2, Chapter 1 deserves its own video or two from me. But again, I'm keeping this video sort of like fast-paced just to kind of bring everybody up to speed about what I've been acquiring and reading. I wonder if I used to be a little bit more like sassy in these videos or something. This is the other thing that I bought at McKay's alongside that Proust book. I bought James Skyler, The Morning of the Poem. I found this like edition from the 80s on sale for like $5, and I was like, it's time. I don't own any Skyler books of poetry, but fans of the channel know that I'm a huge fan of Alfred and Guinevere, and they know that I'm really, really, really excited to read What's for Dinner. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to read What's for Dinner. And everybody knows I love Buried at Springs. Buried at Springs is like in all kind of academic writing and stuff. People always talk about that poem. It was a good prep for reading this. This was excellent, and I binge read this, and it really changed the way I wrote for a few days. And I feel like it was kind of like when you don't have weed your whole life, and then the first time you have weed, it like calms you down, and then like a little bit of that calmness lingers maybe forever if you have enough weed, where you have the kind of this critical mass where it kind of calms you down forever. And I feel like, I wonder if people have this experience with Skyler, where they where it kind of calms them down forever about poetry or something, or about form or something. Maybe people start kind of making their own forms based on how they look visually, and not worrying about having a visual component to their form so much. Maybe people don't worry so much about forgetting names in their poems or something like that. Maybe people are more, I think that what it did to me is it made me more excited about my memory. I remember around the time that I was reading, like the reason I was able to read so much recently was that because I deleted Instagram off my phone, and I felt like I was just thinking more. I was just by myself remembering things, enjoying remembering. And I blathered on to my mom for a long time about this, but it's true. I was enjoying memory more. I was enjoying just like remembering. And I think that the morning of the poem, and James Skyler in general, not to mention Proust, I think like Michael Clune really also, a big memory person. It was just like memory was on my mind, and I was enjoying memory. Like when you're alone and you just let yourself think back, you remember stuff. You do. You think you don't, but you do. And it may not be what you thought you would remember, but your mind goes somewhere. And I think like if you can honor that, it probably makes you a better writer about the past, in your poems. Like if you're like James Skyler and you're writing about childhood and your old home life or something, or some, stuff like that. But it also probably makes you a better writer about the present, like a better haiku writer too. Because your honest impressions of the things you see in the world will probably involve like an involuntary memory. And I feel like that reaction is part of the form of a haiku, is it not? This is just a beautiful book. See, it's got like texture to the paper. It's a little bit kind of browned and toasted around the edges from oils or sun or something. It's a little bit brittle. You've got this beautiful Anne Dunn picture on the front. And when you're reading it, you're so thrilled to have Anne Dunn's picture on the front because she's such a character in the book. And poems in the book are dedicated to her. I think one of my favorite poems in the book is dedicated to her, that Afterwards one. The morning of the poem itself, I totally binge read, as I've said. And like, I was just beyond my understanding of it. I was just like drinking it in. At a certain point, I was like, I've read too much of this, but like, I want to have read too much of this at one sitting. Like, I want it to be overwhelming. And it was a great experience. I read it late at night. Also, I will point out that as this is a Farrar Straus Giroux publication, underneath the jacket is very beautiful. And I read it without the jacket on. This cloth section is pretty wide. Because this is kind of brittle. So I think every time I take this down and like take this book out on the town, I'll probably de-jacket it and just set the jacket like on top of some books on the shelf. So there was that, and then I brought this to Knoxville. It's the only novel I brought to Knoxville. I brought The Faces, and I read The Faces and loved it. I have a video on the Copenhagen trilogy. This deserves its own video. When I was driving back to Knoxville, my friend Ben said he was reading Anne Rice and was enjoying it. I had always meant to read Anne Rice, so I went and I got this for $3 at the Half Price Books, clearance section. A real steal, if you ask me. A beautiful edition. It has this kind of slender thing. It's got a plate of a picture in the front. It's really nice without its jacket, but I read it with its jacket on because it's one of those laminated, sturdy jackets. These are the kind of physical details that we get into on this channel. It starts out with this wonderful picture. I actually still don't really know how this pertains to the book. I need to reread the book to understand that. I enjoyed this book way more than I thought I would, and it deserves its own video. There's like a portion of the book where it was behaving as I expected, and then there was like a vast portion of the book where it was like sounding like I expected, but I was swept away more than I was expecting to be. And I think it had to do with like the setting and the insistence of the like religious stuff. I loved it. So And it was a very cozy read. I read it in that chair by the lamp. Yeah, under the soft white light of that lamp, I read this book, and I really, really enjoyed it. This deserves its own video, too. And then recently, I've been getting into Jim Thompson. I've had this novel for a long time, and I finally read it, and I thought it was a masterpiece. As a kind of a palate cleanser, I've been reading The Narrow Road to the Deep North and other travel sketches. I read Narrow Road to the Deep North once, and then kind of went back through and was reading the other sketches. And now I want to reread this one again. This is like a really good palate cleanser book, and of course it feels like there's this education and poetry that you can get from this book just by osmosis, I think. Like just by reading it, not even discussing it with anyone, just reading it repeatedly. And maybe that's the only way anyone ever learns from books, really. And that maybe discussion is just like kind of warm up for just composition of like an unrelated work or something. What I mean is like you just want to write your own book, and so you're discussing. But if you really wanted to like learn something from your book, you would just reread it silently or something. I don't know. That's of course probably not true. Taking notes is probably very useful. That was just an example of the kind of stupid shit I say on this channel. And then I liked Pop 1280 so much that I got The Killer Inside Me, and this one really made me crave my palate cleanser book. This book is contains like the most violent scenes I've ever read, I think because it really pays attention to like the emotional reality of whoever's getting butchered. It's horrible, but it's awesome. And I love The Killing, that movie by Stanley Kubrick, and this guy wrote that screenplay, so it makes sense that I loved the way the dialogue works in these. It's just, this writer understands how a novel should be paced very well, understands how long a paragraph of exposition should be, how long a chapter should be, what kinds of chapter beginnings are surprising, what we expect a character to do next, where we expect them to go, how we expect them to wake up and fall asleep and everything, and it's just like, and then everything physical in the books is just written with this absolute, precision, and it's just horrifying and wonderful. This is the book I'd recommend to these two, Pop 1280. This is not the book I would recommend unless you loved this, as I did, and kind of want to get farther inside Jim Thompson, maybe reach the killer inside him. I really like Jim Thompson, though. I will be seeking out other books of his. And I did purchase this book, Savage Art, the Robert Polito book, a biography of Jim Thompson. Got this from the book deal, and it was a steal, and it's got this kind of nice, who's that, Chip Kidd? You can tell Chip Kidd designed this, can't you? Like, that's just who you would guess. He loves this, like, blown up pulp thing. He loves that so much, like the pop art thing, a pop art reference. So those are the most recent things I read. I think what I'd like to read next is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, or something else random. Oh, there are some library checks I could tell you about. So Slumberland, some people I know know some people who are doing a book club of Slumberland, and so I want to read Slumberland. It's really up my alley, just like content-wise. It's about the beat that just won't quit, right? It's about like a perfect beat, right? So I think this is going to be a really wonderful pleasure read. So I checked it out of the library, and then I checked this out too, Interview with the Vampire, the original thing, the one that I think that set it all off. And really excited to read some more Anne Rice. Hopefully I can get back on the horse and go into detail about any of these reading experiences I had recently, if that would interest you. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep reading, and you all will too, and we'll keep enjoying these Vince Guaraldi, Charlie Brown Christmas snowy days.